The two videos I watched were Die Architektin und Der Land hinter dem Regenbogen. And as far as accuracy and effect go, I couldn't have picked two better movies. Die Architektin was, I assume, quite accurate, and Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen was not accurate. It was pretty much entirely for effect. But still, you had the divisions, the boundaries in both movies. The video log I did for last week explained the boundaries in Die Architektin. Then you have similar boundaries in Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen, but these boundaries were more, maybe they weren't meant to be comical, but they appeared comical. And they were very much, the contrast was more stark in Das Land rather than Die Architektin. In Die Architektin, well, I've already described that in the last video, but in Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen, you had the grandfather, which was a staunch communist, Stalinist, however you want to describe him, and he had his little village and was leading it how he saw fit. So Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen was a film that mocked communism, Stalinism, the former East German government, however you want to put it. And it ended with the downfall of the grandfather being crucified. That was a very telling moment in how the film ended, with the parade coming in, going through the village, the grandpa getting crucified, chaos everywhere. What I gathered was that kind of symbolized the wall falling, East Germany breaking ties with the Soviet Union, and then coming together with West Germany. That's how I interpreted it. And I believe that's how it was meant to be interpreted. But several scenes in the video, I believe, showed the absurdity and the chaos and the backwardness, I guess you could say backwardness, of the East German government and life under a paranoid, psychotic police state. One scene that was crazy and I think really captures best the absurdity of Stalinism was when the man was laying in bed in his room, and then his wife, I presume was his wife, walks in, starts taking off his belt, hops on, they're going to start having sex, but then their son walks in, asks the dad a question, and she's still on top fiddling with the belt. And the son walks off, and before he's even out of the scene, she starts trying to have sex again. That obviously, I would hope, wouldn't happen in real life. But the scene where the parents were trying to have sex, or were having sex in front of their kid, and the kid walks off, everything was completely normal, like that wasn't taboo. And I think that really hit home for what the writers were trying to push in Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen. There was this constant absurdity, this constant, I guess, weirdness, off-puttedness in East German life with the communist state, but it seemed normal. Everyone continued life as usual. Everything continued on as it should, but it was crazy. So that scene, I think, really hit home for what the writers were going for in Das Land. The next scene that I think really is striking was when the grandfather had all the kids lined up out front, and he was going around asking them to essentially rat out their parents. And then the one kid goes up to the grandfather. I keep calling him he's the grandfather. It's the kid's grandfather. So the one kid comes up to him and says, "Well, I heard my dad call you a Thickerbot, the goat's beard." And then he goes, "Oh, really? That's very good, kid." Pats her on her head. And so this scene was, it was set up to be kind of comical, kind of absurd, because that's what the premise of the entire movie was. But still, in the former East German state, you had this massive intelligentsia, the spy agency, whose job was just that. Neighbors would turn on neighbors, relatives on relatives, to get whatever they could, to get whatever information they could to give to the state. So this kid turning on her parents was a very good analogy for what happened, what would actually happen in East Germany. So you had this. Even though Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen was pretty much entirely done with effect, it was loud, boisterous, over the top, just insane, to drive home the point that Stalinism, that communism, was a completely absurd style of government. But they also were accurate in some regards, because their crazy metaphors, their crazy costumes, the crazy set, still showed truth. The spy apparatus, the absurdity of life. And then again, the final scene with the grandfather being crucified, the fall of communism. And so even though the movie was very boisterous and over the top, it still was accurate. So Die Architekten und Das Land hinter dem Regenbogen, both were two very, very different movies, but still drove home the same point of that divide between capitalism and communism, between East and West, between, I guess, absurdity and modernism, you could say. So while they're both very different, they both had very good points.